You're listening to Stealing from Wizards, Volume 2, Burglary, by R.A. Consul. Chapter 13, Le Chateau du Printemps. Kuro's good mood lasted almost all the way to breakfast the next day. He slept well and woke drowsy and content. He sat down for a nice bowl of snap pea yogurt with a generally positive attitude and hope in his heart. But he wasn't even allowed to finish before Vice Principal Flint arrived at the lodge. Kuro sighed and went to fetch his bag but was stopped. "Not this time. Come with me." Flint was too surly and tired for pleasantries. He just pointed and Kuro walked. He thought he was being led to Flint's office, but they skipped the turning for the school and went on to the gates of the Chateau du Printemps. Kuro had never been on the chateau grounds before. They were filled with sprawling gardens, weeping willows, and cherry trees, all perpetually in bloom. They walked past a long, shallow reflecting pool, which served no purpose except for petals to float delicately on. The chateau was a palace much more than it was a residence. Marble from top to bottom gleamed white in the morning sun. Tall, narrow columns flanked tall, narrow arches which framed tall, narrow windows, giving the whole thing the look of having been stretched upwards several stories. Kuro was unable to truly appreciate the majesty of the chateau, however, as a wolf prowling outside the main doors pulled his attention away from the soaring architecture. The beast stopped sniffing the ground at their approach and fixed Kuro with its golden eyes. "Hi, Garmer," grumbled Kuro as Flint pushed him into the residence. Talon Dubois' familiar lifted its chin as if to nod a greeting to Kuro, and went back to cataloging the various smells outside the chateau. The interior was ridiculously ornate. Kuro couldn't imagine who would have enough time to paint all the paintings and sculpt all the sculptures. The soaring arched ceilings were covered with stunning murals depicting scenes of nymphs dancing in the sun. Every surface was crafted by a master's hand and adorned with mosaics and marble statues. Chandeliers and candelabras of crystal and gold crowded the hallways, filling them with a bright, scintillating light. Even the air felt decorated, with scents of lilies, jasmine, and lavender taking turns in his nostrils. It was beautiful, but useless. People were supposed to live there, but there wasn't anywhere he could see to do any living. All of Autumn Lodge could neatly fit in the entryway, and yet there wasn't a single place to sit or a safe place to play. Kuro couldn't figure out the point of it all. He was ushered into a grand, sweeping staircase whose steps began to move him upward the moment he was on it. It seemed the residents of the chateau were too rich to have to exert themselves with anything so pedestrian as climbing stairs. At the end of yet another corridor full of endless art, Kuro was greeted by a pair of hounds who were standing bored outside of a room. One was a surly and grizzled woman who grunted at him. The other was chipper and friendly, and Kuro distrusted him immediately. "Go on in, Kuro. The boss is waiting." Kuro didn't like hounds, but the friendly ones were the worst. It was like a dragon being cordial to sheep. Flint abandoned Kuro at that point, retreating from the hounds and leaving Kuro to his fate. There was a lot to take in upon entering the room. First was the sheer size of it. Based on the furnishings, it could only be a student's bedroom, but it was twice the size of the one Kuro shared with Arthur. There was a desk for studying, a dressing table, and a writing desk. The bed was big enough for 2 adults to sleep comfortably, and there was a wardrobe big enough to fit the bed inside of. All that space and furnishing, though, was just fuel for the disaster the room had been turned into. The wardrobe was emptied onto the floor and every drawer upended. Their contents spilled out across the room. The duvet, mattress, and pillow had been torn open, coating the room in fluffy white down. The familiars of the 2 hounds were meticulously sniffing their way through the room. One was a long, gray, tightly muscled creature that moved with methodic efficiency. The other looked more like an enthusiastic mop as it bounded around the room, wagging its tail and stirring up the feathers so that they got into Kuro's mouth and nose. Kuro did his best to ignore and remain ignored by the 2 human occupants of the room, but that proved impossible. "Why is he here?" screeched Evelyn. She stood at the center of the destroyed room, as if at the eye of a hurricane, perfectly polished and untouched by the devastation around her. "You accused him of being the burglar," replied Talon Dubois. He leaned against one of the posts of the bed frame, his long green uniform coat unbuttoned. I brought him in for questioning.
I do not see why that means he should be allowed in my bedchamber.
According to your report, Lady Lemieux, he has already been in your bedchamber. Dubois managed to sound respectful yet condescending at the same time. And it can be informative to have a suspect revisit the scene of the crime.
Suspect?
Evelyn huffed.
He is the culprit for certain. He should already be in chains.
And your evidence against him. Dubois pulled out a notebook and pen from deep in a large satchel he carried over one shoulder. For the official record, Demoiselle Lemieux.
He is a thief. Everyone knows it.
Dubois wrote dutifully, but added his own thoughts. He is certainly a thief, but that is, unfortunately, insufficient evidence to be certain that he is the thief. Have you anything else?
It is a clear act of vengeance. He is jealous of my royal bearing and was terribly shamed at the feast.
Dubois looked to Kuro for a response. I don't... Kuro choked halfway through answering. The little dog had just stirred up a bunch of down, and he had inhaled a mouthful, which tasted of salt, soap, and seaweed. The flurry of feathers didn't bother the other two, as they were too tall for the feathers to reach their faces.
I don't remember that,
he said as he tried to spit them out.
He was called a barbarian, a thief, and a scoundrel,
Evelyn said as though they were the gravest of insults.
And he was seen to be uncouth and uncultured in front of several members of the noblesse.
Dubois raised an eyebrow and tapped his pen, awaiting Kuro's reply. Kuro was picking the remaining feathers off his tongue by hand.
Yeah?
He agreed around his extended tongue.
That's all true. It didn't bother me, though.
That infuriated Evelyn beyond words and allowed Dubois some time to interrogate Kuro. Can you account for your whereabouts last night between the hours of 7 p.m. and midnight? At the festival, same as everyone. Kuro scowled up at the smug face of the hound. And can anyone vouch for your presence for every moment of the festival? Dubois asked. No, Kuro admitted. Probably not. I danced with a lot of people. Evelyn clapped as though a steel trap had been shut. Dubois was not as convinced. Troublesome, he said, continuing to scribble notes diligently. And yourself, demoiselle, could you have anyone account for your whereabouts the entire evening? Evelyn's red face and extended silence answered the question for her. But that's the nature of the festival. I doubt there's a student in the school who has a reliable alibi for the entire event. Dubois sighed in frustration. It will make establishing a case against the accused more difficult.
You're not going to arrest him?
Evelyn's voice cracked as she realized what Dubois was saying. I'm sorry to say, Demoiselle Lemieux, that there is insufficient evidence at this time to make an arrest. Dubois shut his notebook. Rest assured that the Royal Guard will take your testimony fully into account and will investigate with all resources available.
But...
Evelyn started to interrupt. It would reflect poorly on everyone involved if Mr. Hayashi here was arrested inappropriately, especially as there is a history of this student being falsely accused at the school. If there's anything else, milady? Dubois offered, then continued when Evelyn failed to speak. Then I will escort Mr. Hayashi out of here. I'm sure you'd agree he shouldn't be allowed unsupervised access to the Chateau grounds. Evelyn waved them off imperiously. Kuro did not need any encouragement to leave. He stomped out, covered head to toe in feathers and trailing more behind him, a fact that wasn't lost on the servant they passed in the hall, pushing a cart full of fresh bedding and cleaning implements. He was the same pale man with thinning hair and tired eyes who had served Evelyn's table at the feast. His gaze fell on Kuro and conveyed the sense that he was personally responsible for all of the woes of the servant. Given the events of the past day, Kuro couldn't blame him. Dubois breezed past him, but Kuro stopped to apologize for the mess. Très bien, monsieur, was the servant's only response. Germer joined them as they left the building, moving in to flank Kuro and block paths of escape. Kuro noticed the wolf, but paid little mind. He was puzzling over everything that had just happened. It didn't make sense. Once clear of the gates, Dubois prodded Kuro. So, what do you think? Kuro's suspicion of the hound snapped into focus. Why are you here? Dubois shrugged. I'm investigating a series of unexplained burglaries. Normal business for the guard. But why are you here? Kuro repeated. You're the head of the hounds. Those two sniffers could have done it without you. As the Knight Commander of the Canine Unit of the Royal Guard, Dubois corrected, puffing himself up and walking like a proper guardsman, I am often called on in cases where the nobility has been targeted. Kuro stared at the hound until he returned to his normal loping predatory gait. Also, I'm the one who first arrested you. You're my case. I didn't do it, Kuro grumbled at the hound. Convince me, Dubois growled. It's all wrong, replied Kuro. I would have come through the window, and I wouldn't have locked it behind me when I left. Also, I never made a mess when I robbed a place. Most people never knew I'd been there. Also, the stuff that's been taken is worthless. There are lots better valuables left behind. And the mess is the same no matter what they take, whether it was hidden or not. It doesn't look like a burglary at all. What does it look like to you, then? A sly grin crept across Dubois' mouth. You want me to be a snitch for you? Kuro clammed up immediately. Not at all, Dubois laughed unconvincingly. I don't need another informant. Besides, that would require you to know something. If you knew I was innocent, why did you drag me all the way out here without breakfast? I didn't know, Dubois defended. I suspected. And now everyone will think I'm guilty, being talked to by the hounds. Everyone already thinks you're guilty, replied Dubois. Being questioned and then released will go a long way to throwing water on that fire. So this was some kind of favor? Kuro was skeptical. The Royal Guard does not do favors. We are impartial arbiters of the laws of the Confederation. He said the lie as though reading it off a plaque. Chasing you is a waste of everyone's time. Besides, you may have given me some valuable information that we'd overlooked. Kuro was annoyed that he might have helped the hound. What's that? The window was locked. Thank you for listening to Stealing from Wizards. If you liked our show, please consider rating or reviewing on iTunes. If you want to support this podcast or just can't wait for the next chapter, the full book is available on Amazon, Kobo, and Indigo. Our theme music was written by Camille Saint-Saëns, transcribed by Franz Liszt, performed by Rebecca Verdun, and used with permission. This episode was produced by Jim Tigwell.